especially when you are doing your proposal, like you outline all your expectations there, so your client knows um, what what is he expecting from you, what is he waiting for you to deliver, right? And once those expectations are laid down the very first day, uh, we all know what's gonna happen, right? And again, when
Nobody likes surprises.
well, exactly, right? When expectations are not met, it leads to frustrations, right? It's like a relationship to your wife, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do the dishes, she's gonna be mad at you, right? Like you gotta lay down the first day, right?
Yeah. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the workshop presented by Applin Martin. Today we sat down with Carlos Marcondes and Ryley Dewar from our Vancouver office branch. Carlos is a project engineer and contract administrator, having 6 years of experience with Applin and Martin and 12 years of industry experience overall. Ryley Dewar is a project engineer, having 3 years of experience with Applin and Martin and 6 years of industry experience overall. Today we dive into lessons learned throughout the proposal, pre-design process, and what it takes to manage expectations before a project comes to life. Had a great time recording this one. Hope you all enjoy. So let's jump right into it. Let's get a little bit of your introduction, your experience, your role at Applin, and how you got into engineering. Carlos?
It's been almost 6 years here at Applin Martin. Joined in March 12, 2018 as a CAD technician. I became an engineering designer. After my professional engineer license, became a project engineer. It's been a good ride.
Awesome. And you said before that you came from Brazil.
That is correct.
Right?
Yeah. Born of good parents in Brazil. They taught me a lot of good stuff. My dad's a mechanical engineer. He always pushed me to become an engineer as well.
Awesome.
And yeah, I got my graduation back in Brazil as a civil engineer and came to Canada a little bit more than 6 years ago.
Very cool. Riley?
Yeah, so I'm a project engineer in the land development group in the Vancouver office.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Vancouver. I went to school out east, though, in Kingston, Ontario at Queen's. And then I was drawn back to Vancouver just because I love all the outdoor activities here, and my family's also from the area. I've been working for Applin Martin for 3 years now. I started as an engineering designer, got my PN here, and now have moved into like a project engineering role. And then prior to working at Applin Martin, I worked for a large multidisciplinary engineering firm in Vancouver for 4 years. I decided to lead that firm because Applin Martin's got a great culture. I saw their work and it looked really good.
Yep.
It impressed me, so I came here and I've learned lots.
As you guys have gone through all your experience using through the project engineers and starting even younger, you guys have obviously gone through the full design phase, through the whole project phase, probably seen projects from start to finish through all the way through to construction. In this episode here, we're going to be focusing more so on the proposal and pre-design, as you guys both know is a super important step,
Agreed.
super important process that you definitely do not want to miss out on certain details that can come up later in the design process and then in the construction process, that's for sure. So Carlos, I'll start with you. Do you want to give me a brief either definition, description about what to you a proposal and pre-design process is?
Yeah, it's a document we prepare to our clients. In my case, I work with Capital Works, so mostly with municipalities. In Riley's case, it's the land development, so developers. It's a document where we state our assumptions. We include all sorts of information about the scope of work, and we also include our fees there.
And then obviously, Ryley, you said, so you guys work on different types of projects specifically, right? So Ryley, how does that differ from your, proposal pre-design process?
I think from a land development perspective, it's not always as clear as Capital Works what the defined scope would be. So from our end, it's really important in a proposal to outline all of our assumptions, as Carlos hit on there, like be very clear on the scope of work. And also like what I like to do is, really ask the developers, municipalities, like what they anticipate the scope of work to be. So we try and make our proposals as inclusive as possible, make sure that there's no surprises in the project cycle as it goes forward.
And I think that's the biggest thing as well, like we were speaking about before, right, is managing expectations. What are you asking us and what are we going to be able to provide, right? Because there are certain things where at the end of the project, when you're submitting it, you could be like, well, we didn't discuss this, or this wasn't something that, or you gave too much and then they're expecting a different number or something like that, right? So it kind of goes
Exactly.
both ways. I don't know if you guys have any experience with that or if you want to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I think it's something very very important, especially when you are doing your proposal. Like you outline all your expectations there, so your client knows um, what what is he expecting from you, what is he waiting for you to deliver, right? And once those expectations are laid down the very first day, uh, we all know what's gonna happen, right? And again, when
Nobody likes surprises.
well, exactly, right? When expectations are not met, it leads to frustrations, right? It's like a relationship to your wife, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do the dishes, she's gonna be mad at you, right? Like you gotta lay down the first day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think from like a land development perspective in particular, like we deal with a lot of like on-site versus off-site scope of work. So on-site, would be everything within a building development parcel, and off-site would be everything kind of getting into Carlos realm like of capital works. So in our document, it's really important to outline like what exactly we're going to deliver on-site, because sometimes there's crossover between our scope, mechanical engineers, landscape architects, etc. And then for the offsite scope, I found it's really important to outline what submissions you expect, because all of the municipalities we deal with in the Lower Mainland kind of have different milestones where they expect deliverables to be.
Yep.
So it's super important to like get those all outlined in your proposal, and I think that's what our clients look for, is like how competent our proposals are and how well we really understand that scope.
Yeah, I think that's super important as well, right? Because a lot of the times then, not even just what they're expecting towards the end, but a comment can come back, right, from the municipality, and they'll be like, why wasn't this included with what you've submitted for
Exactly,
your work, right?
yeah.
It could just be like, well, it wasn't brought up while we were discussing the initial proposal phase or while we were discussing the pre-design phase, right? So it's super important to almost, again, like you guys said, outline everything right from the start. It's a lot easier to fix it from the beginning than it is to go back at the end, right?
Correct. Agreed.
So while you guys are doing your background and your research for your pre-design, before you actually even begin to say use AutoCAD or start that, what do you guys specifically like to look for?
Yeah, well, like I said, for me, it's a little bit different than the land development area, right? Like the capital works, I feel like it's a more of a teamwork with the municipality or your client there, right? And I think you're both looking to the same goal, which this is why I actually respect a lot the guys who do land development. It's much
give
harder
us
for
props.
them.
Yeah, give us some
Yeah,
props.
it's much harder for them.
Bit of an art.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important. Like this, we always do this thing called kickoff meeting with municipalities, where we after the proposal or before the proposal, right? We actually take a look on the Google Maps or even go to the site,
Yep.
make some points, and then the city also has like the whole background information about their assets, like being that a road or a sewer, and then we lay down my points, they lay down their points, and we kind of sum up those points, and then you're just summing up information and gathering all their minds there, and we're working towards the same goal, which is to most of my job is a sewer work. I do
Yep.
replacement of sewers, big sewers. So we're always looking to that goal together, right? And I personally think it's much harder for a land development engineer to do that, to do the work.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important from my perspective for the pre-design process is taking a look at what other projects Applin Martin has worked on in that area. Like, we have very extensive experience in the municipalities that we operate in. So typically, very close to whatever the development project site is, there's a similar job that Applin Martin did 2 to 3 years ago. So I take a look at that project, see what kind of deliverables they needed to produce, talk to the project manager for that project, see what sort of constraints that they ran into, anything that I should be aware of, when I'm preparing my proposal or design, and really like try to fully understand and visualize like where our project site is going based on, a similar project that we are so lucky to have been involved in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even like you're copying the project, right? But you're able to use it almost like as a template or almost like a walkthrough kind of that, okay, here.
Exactly,
Even
yeah.
though we're not going to be doing A to Z 100% of what this previous project was, say 5 blocks down the road. But I do have a blueprint of how they did it. And if there was an obstacle that they might have faced, that we'll be able to kind of use maybe not the exact solution, but a very similar solution.
Exactly, yeah, and the solutions do really vary because, like, in the built environment, and like the challenge that I always find in civil engineering is like existing conditions
Oh, sure.
are so different from
every
site
year.
to site.
Yeah.
Having like a large water main in front of your site could fundamentally change how you service the project. So, totally agree with that point. It's just sort of a reference document for your project that you're working on at that time.
I was gonna say now. So as you guys have gone through this pre-project process, proposal process a couple of times now, what was one of your earliest or first memories? I guess lessons learned, kind of that you've brought now through this process as you do it more and more often.
I think for me, it's taking a very deep dive into the survey and existing base documents and really trying to think about everything that can kind of affect my project design. So one of my first memories is, I was working with Carlos's PM Roy. That was sort of my first boss when I started here. He mentioned to me that it's so important to take the survey plan and go walk the site before getting into design. And I never really heard that from anybody before. I kind of thought, it's going to take me some time to drive out there. Is that worth the investment?
Why am I doing this? Yeah.
But I can assure you, it is definitely worth the investment because, a little symbol on a plan that shows a streetlight pole is actually like a massive pole that's, 40 feet tall.
It's not just a little dot on the drawing, right?
Exactly.
It's actually there.
And like you might think, oh, it's just a little dot. How difficult could it be to just move, that for my water main? But no, that's not how it works. Like you have to redesign your whole system sometimes around these things if they're not properly, established in the pre-design phase. The other lesson that Roy taught me is like it's really important to get very accurate like as-built information for a project. So we had a site next to some very important like TELUS infrastructure. And the interesting thing about TELUS, that's the telecommunications company out here in BC, they require you to pay for the as-builts. So we paid for the as-builts up front because that information was like priceless to us because everything on where that utility was like affected our entire design. If we would have not done that, then we would have gone into a situation where we're redesigning the whole project in construction. And that's really what you want to try to avoid in the pre-design process.
Yeah, I really like what Ryley said. Like we used to do this BC one call thing where this company gives you all the information, all the drawings, all the not always like as-built drawings, but they have like at least like a plan showing each sort of infrastructure is there on site. Like it's really important to have that prior to completing a proposal. So you know what's happening on site. It's really important that.
Yeah, and I can speak to that for sure about the as-built drawing. So in Toronto, a lot of the records date back to the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. Because that's when the original sewers were actually put in. And not only are they that old, but they're scanned in and hand-drawn. So a lot of the times when you're getting them,
I'm sorry for you, man.
You're not even actually able because they're not physical drawings anymore. I don't even know if they actually exist anymore. But they're just copies of them through the computer, and half the time it's kind of crazy that you're not even able to read exactly what the numbers are a lot of the times, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry for you.
I was gonna say, do you guys experience that
feel the
here in
pain.
terms of as-built when you guys get them, or how do you find the information? Would you say that they're fairly accurate?
I feel like
10,
Vancouver
15,
has a
20
very
years, or?
good record of drawings, right?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, the plans that they haven't scanned like are drawn at such a large scale. Like normally, it's like reasonably easy to establish what's going
Decipher,
on.
you don't got it's not hieroglyphs to you.
The only issue though is like, and I've seen this, with some of our younger engineering designers is like everything used to be constructed in feet.
Yeah.
And it's like the base point in feet. I don't recall exactly what it was, but it's not like 0 meters like sea level. So you have to do to get to the right invert elevation, whereas some people I've seen some people put in pipes that are at the wrong elevation just because they didn't do that conversion. So that's one of the tricky things that we run into. But at least information is normally pretty visible.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I was gonna say because you guys also have, I think, on some BC project, you also have like an online infrastructure system as well that you guys could use.
The GIS, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
In order to find pipe.
A lot of municipalities have like a GIS, which is really great, and then some also like City of Surrey is like I'd say arguably the most sophisticated, and they have it so that you can draw a little box over the pipe that you're looking at a GIS, and it'll give you the record drawing for that area. So it's some of the municipalities out here are quite sophisticated.
Jealous.
Some are not though. So it's not it's not across the board. I've still gone through just utility maps of a full municipality trying to find information before. It happens still.
But the GIS definitely helps us a lot. Even though it's just a sketch, let's put it this way, it helps you to have an idea what's happening there. Right?
Yeah. Now, in terms of when you're doing, Carlos, like you mentioned before, you hold like these pre-designed meetings and stuff with all the parties kind of involved. Are there any tricks or are there anything you like to bring up 100% at every meeting to make sure the project goes smoothly? Is there something you make sure that, hey, by the way, if nobody brings this up, this is the topic I'm bringing up, just to make sure I know everybody's going to kind of be on the same page?
Yeah, no, definitely. So most of my work is I mostly work with sewer works, like sewer design and sewer construction, right? So one thing I've been proposing to every single municipality we work with is we do have some sort of a 25% design submission, which is like a very first submission, where we would just have like a plan view and the existing infrastructure. And I would not even touch AutoCAD. I would just go to PDF markups and propose alignments for the pipes. And then I would submit to the city. So the city wouldn't understand what we are thinking. Yeah. We would understand what they are thinking after their comments come back, right? And I think it's really helpful once you have those alignments, let's put it this way, locked.
Yeah.
So like...
No surprises,
yes.
You could say. Kind of.
Yeah, and the city already, like, since day one, they know what you are envisioning for the design.
Yeah. Ryley?
Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes that well. We don't, right now in land development, do a lot of sort of the pre-feasibility like pre-design meetings. And I think that's something that I really do think can be improved a little bit in our land development group because they are so important to establish, the project parameters and everybody's expectations. So now that I've started to develop, after working here for 3 years, some really good connections with certain municipalities, I'll definitely start reaching out to those staff members just so that we understand all constraints at the start of a project, so that there's no surprises as we get deeper into the design process.
Now, as you guys kind of gather all of this information and you guys are kind of all deciphering it from the proposal side, are there any specific challenges that you guys would say you have faced, if it's like a specific example or something in general that you think could be smoothed over?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it's very particular to every project you have, and there are always challenges to every single project. Being a land development project or a capital work, there's always some sort of infrastructure that you're not expecting to be there. There's always like some old manhole there that it's in bad shape that you did not expect to be in that shape, and this is another point that that Ryley mentioned at the beginning. Like, you go on site, you grab one of those levers and you start popping up the manholes, so you can actually see what's going on inside.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that for sure, especially sometimes with the Toronto as-built specifically, that's where I do most of my work, is that you don't always take the as-built and you definitely don't take the survey for what, like Ryley mentioned before, for granted, right? Like, you have a little bit more investigative work. Yeah. Because sometimes you can see things that are like a meter or two off in elevation. You're like, what's going on there? Until you actually do the investigation, and then you get on site, you take photos, you're like, no, this is actually how it works on the ground and then beneath the ground. You know what?
Yeah. One thing I've been finding very important is, it's definitely not a problem, because I cannot say that a tree is a problem, but you go on the street and you know where your trench is going to be, and then you realize that small circle in the survey, it's actually a huge tree. And you know that the roots are going.
Oh, and the root systems get you too. And then you're into the world of arborist reports, which is always fun.
Yeah. So, like I said, I can't say a tree is a problem.
Yeah.
But they can become a problem, right?
Yeah. I think for me, like, one challenge that I've run into is, when a survey doesn't have, this is very particular, but like when a survey like doesn't have all the information you need, and then you rely on as-builts for sometimes like mission critical systems. So let's say you need to hit a storm invert at a certain point and you rely on as-builts instead of going out and getting that extra field work. One thing that I've realized is normally, you can get a surveyor to site for a day for not very much money, and you can kind of combine all your pre-designed questions at one go and then ask them to complete an additional survey scope, and that can like really save a project later on.
Yes.
I've had projects where contractor will go and like do their utility survey at the onset and realize that a baseline assumption that we had based on an as-built drawing is not necessarily correct, and then we're scrambling to try and issue site instructions. So really getting ahead of it with that, and I think is like a good way that we're trying to address that challenge.
Yeah. Now talking about more things, I guess that you've had, I guess, during the pre-design or during some of these investigations. Is there one specific example where you could say, "Wow, I'm so freaking happy that I caught that before I actually started my design," whether it was a survey or an as-built or something that might have been overlooked, that while you were getting ready to do your design, that, oh my God, like I can't believe like I may have missed it kind of on my first go around, but this is definitely something we have to consider while we're completing our design, or something you have to work around.
I can say about something I missed actually.
Go ahead.
We had two huge transmission hydro lines crossing a high-profile road in Vancouver, and we were crossing under those hydro lines, and we sent out an email to BC Hydro, like asking for information, asking for if they approval for all the approvals, and I think like 6 months later, they provided a response. Yeah, it's fine, it's okay, right? And they sent like 3 or 4 pages of information as well. And you see like, oh, it's okay. Okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
You start skipping those 3-4 pages, right? Well, guess what? We went on site, started digging up. One of those transmission lines were way below where we expected to be. So there's now all that hustle, all the rush to redesign, prepare site instruction, which for something I could have just spent like another 20 minutes reading the whole email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my end, one thing that I've realized, and it less relates to like our design effort, but also like just in the disciplines that we coordinate with a lot, is sometimes like we get input from electrical engineers, mechanical engineers for gas systems, and I haven't really realized, but like they don't live in the world that we live in, where they understand what all these utilities are. And sometimes I've had electrical engineers like try to run something to our building, like through. Like this is a City of Richmond example. So City of Richmond's really flat, so a lot of their storm drainage is with box culverts, but they're trying to run BC Hydro they thought above a box culvert, but from my experience, like the box culverts are normally basically the roads right on top of them. So you can't get
unless you're going above the ground.
You can't get the you just can't get the cover to run that electrical conduit. So one thing that I've realized that I'm trying to like change in my kind of approach is trying to inform those parties like of what I learned from our pre-design process to get a better end result for our clients. Like it's not necessarily our drawings that get improved, but it's the overall project just goes much smoother, because again, that was we are scrambling to try and figure out a different way for these electrical engineers to try to service this building now.
Yeah, and I think something that I like to do as well, in terms of like catching things that you might not see on like a survey or as-built, is I know now we're now moving to a world where everything's online and everything's just on PDFs. But even just printing out the survey and printing out the as-builts and looking them like this,
helps
like
a lot,
right on paper and circling and highlighting,
Agreed.
and just getting the raw actual information instead of me staring at a screen and zooming in and trying to find everything. Like looking at it from a bird's eye view and actually picking them out and highlighting and be like, okay, that's this, this is this. Now I actually have everything on one sheet of paper and I can go ahead with the next steps.
Yeah, well, one thing I'd like to highlight is more to complement what Ryley was just saying is, although I mostly work with Capital Works, I do have a couple land development projects. And one thing I learned throughout these years is when we are doing off-site coordination with all these other consultants and third-party utilities, we have much of a similar role as a CP for on-site. We gather all this information, we include in a key plan, and we submit to the city. And it's in our, but it's not. It cannot be something mechanical where you just copy and paste and submit. Like we need to like you said, you need to start like reading what they sent you. Like you see like amazing things like piping running through a pole. You see a lot of fun and stuff there.
Yeah.
That if you just copy and paste, you will not catch that. And
yeah.
Well, then by the end of the day, you cannot submit that, right? You have comments back, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, again, going back to almost the human aspect, don't be so robotic about it, and
Yeah.
don't be like, oh, okay, like I've done this 150 times, like I could do it 151 times, right? Because that 151 time, like you said, might be the one time with the transmission wires or something like that,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, I took it for granted, and everything's just gonna be the exact same. I did a project 2 blocks down. No big
Yeah.
deal, right? I think just being able to disassociate kind of from that, and then always make sure that just to basically be on your toes, like I'm doing it from step 1, 100% detail, basically all throughout, right?
Yeah, and Julian, I really agree with your point on printing out key, starting documents, and I try to ingrain that in all our engineering designers here. That it's like so important to have a little binder for every large project that you have that has all that existing information, because there's something about printing it, highlighting it, and having it there just reminds you that much more than it just being in the background of your drawings. It's too easy to forget sometimes.
100%. Moving on now after the different catches, I guess, or stuff like that. What would you guys say throughout your career is your welcome to engineering moments? Now, this could be something that you'll always remember, whether positive or a lesson, I guess that you could say that something you still tell people to this day that, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, or I'm so glad that this happened that now I'll be able to teach people about.
Well, for me, throughout my life, I was always impressed with those very smart and intelligent people. I was always impressed how they always had the responses like right away. And I always felt the pressure of becoming an engineer and having to respond to those questions right away. Like I always thought like I have to know the answer. I have to know the answer. And if there is one thing I learned throughout this 10 or 9 years or 10 years of career is it's fine to, you don't have to know everything, you know?
You don't know what you don't know.
It's fine to reply to your client, say, I don't have the information at the moment, but I will research that, I will find out. And I came to realize that maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe not even that like that pressure that I was putting on myself, like was not actually necessary at that moment. Sure, you have to find the response, but it doesn't have to be at the very moment,
Yeah, exactly. You're not expected to be Superman. You're not Superman.
Yeah, right?
The biggest thing is, at the end of the day, you're also a human, and you're able to take whatever criticism or whatever the lesson is, like take it, learn from it, grow from it, and move on, right? No one's expecting you to like snap a finger, you're gonna have all the answers, right? It's impossible, right? Especially if they're asking you on the spot. Right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
Yeah, I think my first like welcome to engineering moment would probably be at my first job. I got put on some contract administration, like construction administrative work, for a large like hospital project in the Lower Mainland. And when you go to site as like a young engineer, you don't know much, and you're being asked very like critical questions
There's a
from
kid at
contractors. It can become quite demanding. But like how I realized how you need to adapt to that is as Carlos kind of said, like you don't need to know everything. I took back questions that I didn't know to other engineers in my office at the time. Try to get all my knowledge together and just understood like humility of a situation too. Like that particular project, like the contractor was complaining why the pipe was like 6 meters deep, and I didn't really know why. So you have to like figure it out and understand. Sometimes the engineer signing off on the drawing knows something that you don't, and there's a reason for it, and you'll get to that reason, and then everybody will be hopefully more happy with you in the end once you explain things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as an industry, we have to be okay with not knowing the answer right away. I know a lot of us come from an academic background where everyone excelled in school and everyone was able to either know the answer right away in math or be able to just study and be okay with it, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the times you have to now put almost a little bit of your ego aside and be okay with not knowing things. You're not going to know everything,
totally,
right?
Yeah.
Especially like on site, like you described. Unless I grew up in construction or I've been around a construction site my entire life, the chances of me knowing exactly how they're putting that pipe in the ground, that manhole, are probably pretty slim, right?
Yeah.
So I'm there to take information from them, learn from them, and then if they require anything from me, I can be okay with saying, no, hey, don't worry about it. Let me call somebody else who has a little bit more experience from me, and then I can bring the information back to you.
Yeah, I agree. And then like one of the things that I really like about working at Applin Martin is that we have such good relationships with like contractors. So a lot of the times I find with my larger projects, we've been working with a contractor that has a relationship with our company for probably past 30, 40 years. So they're really into finding like collaborative solutions for project issues, unforeseen circumstances. And that's been great for me from a professional development standpoint, because you get to like kind of look at things from a contractor's perspective and understand where they're coming from and get sort of a firsthand view into that world.
What part of engineering, or even just completing engineering or projects or even at Applin could be different examples, what makes you keep coming back to work every day?
I think for me, like why I love, civil engineering and the engineering industry and the built world is like you get to see like your projects directly get constructed and impact your community. So, I don't think there's anything as rewarding as like driving by a site that, you spent long hours on and getting to like walk sidewalks, like see, the drainage infrastructure working. Like that's really what makes me so excited about all the work we do. And that's why I love that we have so many great local clients to work with.
Yeah, I love making fun of with my friends about like, do you see that sewer?
Did you snap out? That was actually me that snapped that one.
No, but for me, like I like the that moment when your client is in trouble and he does not know what to do and he gives you a call. Like he's counting on you, and he calls you, say, hey, dude, can you help me?
Yeah.
And you just by looking at the problem, you say, yeah, you know what? I think I can help you.
Yeah.
And like that,
So satisfying.
yeah, right. Like that reward that that guy trusts you.
Yeah, and it's not even like a hey, by the way, I'm right moment. It's more of that like you're able to actually help them out with something that they want to do to succeed with whatever endeavor they're kind of doing, right? You're able to just share your knowledge to help other people.
Yeah, no,
kind of
it's
move
super
forward,
cool.
right? What is any advice that you would like to pass on to the up and coming generation of people that would want to get into engineering, or even your younger self, say 10, 15 years ago, that you wish that you would have said to yourself now?
I think for me, it would be that like there's no silly question out there, especially when you're first starting out. I remember, and we kind of talked about it here, like we're expected to know everything, as engineers, because we, went through a rigorous schooling process. But in reality, like you learn so much when you're in the workplace. And what I've found is like, when you don't know the answer, it's so great to go ask a senior engineer and get their thoughts on it. Even when I sometimes think I know the answer, it's nice to do that just to make sure there's validation on whatever response I'm providing. So that would be my advice, is just ask away.
Yeah.
Well, I sort of mentioned before, I would come to myself and say, hey, dude, like, it's okay not to know everything, It's like, relax. Yeah. That would be definitely what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I think, again, the same thing, too, is, right, like, as you come out of school or as you're getting older, right, you're at the top of your class or you're at the top of your class in terms of math, science, and all of that, right? But once you actually step into the real world, when you don't actually know how to work, right? It's a whole different process.
It's a bit different, right?
You're not going to class, not taking notes, and then writing an exam and getting a good grade, right? You're actually dealing with people on a fundamental level, and then you're also dealing with projects, right? So it's a lot of different factors kind of coming all at the same time, right? So it's important to not only learn how to do, like you said, don't take so much pressure on yourself, and then also as well, like Ryley said, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions, learn more. There's nothing, if you think it's dumb, that's fine, but at least you'll know it for next time, right? I'm sure you're not going to forget it.
Exactly, yeah.
No, I guess we'll close it off with circling back to the proposals. After you guys win a big proposal, you guys kind of complete, I guess, a nice pre-design. Is there something like a routine that you guys like to do? Is there something you guys like to do in the office as a small celebration, whether it could be as a group, could be solo? Is there a place around here that you guys like to do, or like a routine or a post-proposal win celebration?
Well, with me, I take my wife, my kid, and we go for a dinner together. Like, it's maybe not a routine, but like I like to share to my wife that we made this proposal, like we prepared it, we spent a lot of time there, and we actually won the bid. So it's quite rewarding to have that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say similarly. It's mostly a celebration in your personal life, but I think that's something definitely that I see our office as we grow here and get stronger, like having more celebration of wins. So perhaps when we win a big contract, everybody goes out for a dinner.
Yeah,
I support that.
We do have like great social events here. Lots of rewarding like dinners and happy hours and whatnot. But it would be nice to link those to a successful proposal or pre-design, just to get that reward pathway generated.
Yeah, I would say the same thing as well, kind of for what we do. whenever we win a big proposal or something like that, we always try to make sure that like even if it's a Thursday or Friday, go for lunch, even just grab a drink or something like that. Because again, it only makes you kind of get to know the people on your team even a little bit more, right? Which not only is satisfying that you won the proposal, but then also now you actually got to do do the work for the proposal, right? Like complete the work, do the design, right? So it's a little bit of a win-win situation where you're celebrating a little bit of a win, but a milestone to know that there's other work ahead and potential other jobs.
Oh yeah, and then that's a whole team building effort, and that's going to make you so much stronger when you're doing the work.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you again to Carlos and Ryley for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. And then thanks to everybody for listening to the workshop, and stay tuned for the next episode. Have a great day.